Hello, everybody. Welcome to Movies by McManus, the podcast where we break down movies, comics, TV, books, whatever kind of media you're into in the context of who created it and what effect it's trying to have on the world. And today, we're always really talking about the who created it line. You know, that's definitely at play today because T.J. English, who wrote this book, Havana Nocturne, is my favorite author. And that's kind of why this is the third T.J. English book that we have done. This book is from 2007, and with movies and TV, I like to do things that kind of came out recently. But with T.J. English and his books, I'm such a big fan of him, and just kind of organized crime in general that I'm willing to bend the rules and kind of go back even further. We did the Westies, and that was 1990, which I think is the oldest thing we've done on this podcast.
Which is about the Irish mob.
Which is about the Irish mob.
Happy St.
We're
Patrick's
filming
Day.
this on St. Patrick's Day, and when I got dressed this morning, I forgot that it was St. Patrick's Day, so I'm not wearing green.
I wear this every single day.
And Peter McManus Cafe, our family bar.
I'm wearing my band's hat just because I'm
in Manhattan.
a schmuck.
The oldest family-run bar in New York City.
Yeah, but those people who go out of their way to dress up for St. Patrick's Day could all fucking get shot for all I care.
It is as I get
shot
older
with the vaccine.
As
that's what that means. We're opening this up strong.
Everyone should get vaccinated before you go out partying, or just don't be an idiot.
Well. That's the good thing about the coronavirus. The one good thing the last couple of years, because I said this morning that, this is 2 years in a row now that I'm not working at our family's bar on St. Patrick's Day, which I've done since I'm 17.
Yeah.
The only upside of that is not seeing all the fucking amateur hour, shitheads.
Right.
Who, treat this SantaCon or something like that.
Right.
Where they just get... it's horrible in the city.
Well, yeah. Well, T.J. English, obviously he's Irish, and he moved to New York City in the 80s. He was a cab driver, and kind of that's what made him want to start writing about organized crime, especially the Westies was kind of living in Hell's Kitchen during the time when they were really on the rise.
I didn't realize that.
And and kind of this Havana Nocturne is a bit different than his other books. Different and the same, of where T.J. English, a lot of his books are about ethnicities coming together and trying to rise up via organized crime, and how maybe some people had legit motives when it came to that, that's what they actually wanted, but for the most part it was just kind of an excuse to justify the bad things that they were doing.
Well, he also talks about we watched a podcast that he did with Joey Diaz and Joe Rogan, which he says that he's come to think of organized crime as sort of the American entryway into life, where, in other words, a culture before they're fully assimilated, that's kind of how they'll make their mark, or kind of carve out some path for themselves. He says that
before
they're recognized as fully Americans.
I think that's very. That's why I say that theme is not very present in Havana Nocturne. Havana Nocturne is more about just Havana in the 50s and how the Mafia kind of took it over. In the Westies, it's very present. And the Corporation, which is almost like the sequel to this book, is very much about that. And in the most recent one, it's not the most recent book of his that I read, Born to Kill, about the Vietnamese gangsters.
I didn't realize T.J. English wrote that too.
Yes, T.J. English wrote Born to Kill, and that kind of theme of using organized crime to rise up the ranks is probably most present in that book, Born to Kill, but also that of kind of how hypocritical that idea also is, because if you look at the Irish in Hell's Kitchen, especially in the early days, or the early days of the mob back when it was the Black Hand extortions, all of their victims were other Irish or Italian immigrants. And in Born to Kill, they said that this Vietnamese gang had a rule: you only steal from other Asians, specifically other Asians that just arrived in this country, because a lot of them don't speak the language. They don't understand that you can call the police. They might be afraid to call the police. And that's why this idea of maybe some gangsters believed it. Maybe Lucky Luciano actually believed that he was helping Italians as a whole. But for the most part, they preyed on their own ethnicity, these gangsters. The early days of the Mafia, the Black Hand specifically, where it was like, if you were a successful Italian, they were coming after you. It wasn't, we're all in this together, we're trying to rise up. It's just like, oh, you have money, I'm taking it. Especially if, like, the late 1800s or early 1900s, when a lot of Irish or Italian immigrants were kind of afraid of the police. Yeah, and they weren't. They're the people that you're going to rob because they're not going to go to the cops. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting of just like the way.
That's also the argument of why, this is kind of a weird segue, but why the reason a lot of serial killers go after sex workers,
because they don't go to the police.
Yeah, or why it's good to rob drug dealers,
because they don't.
People talk about, like, Mafia. People talk about,
and that's
that all
also
the time.
You see it today with Long Island with MS-13. The number one people who MS-13 robs are
they're
El Salvadorian, recently came into this country, maybe here illegally, who cannot go to the police.
Yeah, I can't think of any instance. I'm sure there is one, so whatever, but I'm just saying I can't think of any instance in recent years, because that's been kind of the talk on the island. Like, it's kind of died down the last year or two, but for a while, like the last maybe 5 years, MS-13, specifically with a couple of really gruesome murders.
Yes.
Specifically those 2 young girls in Brentwood, which is an area around here. But the point being, they're against,
I'm sure that there are some
people in their neighborhood.
I'm sure that there are a lot of MS-13 members who believe that they're doing this out of, El Salvadorian pride or try to justify it to themselves.
They extort the shit out of their own community.
It was the exact same thing that the mob was doing 100 years ago. That the Black Hand Mafia, or the early days of the Irish or the Jewish mobs were doing exactly then.
MS-13 shakes down local businesses in Brentwood and Central Islip.
Yeah, it's
which is
it's exactly what the mob was doing. Yeah. And we'll bring this up because this book kind of starts in the
and then a guy like Trump uses that in a racist way to kind of scare all these white
and
people.
You know what? That's the terrible thing about it is that now this group MS-13,
and it works, by the way.
This group MS-13 terrorizes El Salvadorian and immigrants who may not be here legally in their community. I don't think that it's terrible no matter what. You shouldn't be terrorizing people. But then somebody like Trump or just white supremacists on Long Island then use MS-13 to terrorize these people even more.
Right, because they're putting into, their electorate, essentially. Because it's not like they give a shit about these neighborhoods.
They don't, but you know what? If you watch all in it, look at the MS-13 murders on Long Island. We're going to get to the book eventually. The MS-13 murders on Long Island, which were the ones who got the most media attention? The ones where the bodies were dropped off in Massapequa. Wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, I see where you're going. They were using
this of
no, because the one that Trump used specifically, literally put it in his 2016 campaign, was the mother of those 2 girls. I can't remember their names right now, but they were killed in one was left on the street in Brentwood, and one was in a wooden area behind a school or something like that. but you know, he took that and ran with it, and that's why it was like those girls' mother, who also ended up being murdered. You know, she aligned with Trump and Peter King, who's like a Republican who's now retired, but you know, and it was just like they're using your situation.
But also, all right. Well, what I was saying was you remember when they found the bodies in Massapequa?
There was a few,
There was a few, and politicians use that to say like these gangs are coming into the white neighborhoods to basically try to scare the white people to get elected, so that they can further terrorize these neighborhoods. The politicians who are now doing it in a different way. They're doing it through the system legally. But if you look at...
It's also just to stay in power. Yeah. Because, you know, people have this idea that Republican and law enforcement go hand in hand, which they do go hand in hand because they look out for each other. But it's not making anyone safer. Right. They're just using the scare tactic to try to remain in power.
If you look at 100 years ago, politicians were doing the exact same thing with the early stage of La Cosa Nostra, or the Black Hand, where they would use these groups who were the Irish or the Italian or the Jewish mobs, who were majority terrorizing Irish, Italians, and Jewish people, and use them to further make laws to oppress the recent immigrant groups. You know, if you look at New Orleans, which New Orleans was the first American city to have a La Cosa Nostra. I might get the details wrong.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but basically,
before New York,
yes. The first mafia family was created in La Cosa Nostra. I don't know the name of was created in New Orleans. The first American mafia.
That's news to me.
But when it came out that this mafia family, which was seen as like these psychopath Italians who are going to go into white neighborhoods and kill everybody, I don't know if they like basically burnt down the Italian section of town, trying to protect them. When really it was like the main victims of the mafia were other Italians.
Well, a couple of parallels. You know, one is with the war on terror. Yeah. Just like, you know, these terrorist attacks happen, so we have to sign away your rights with this Patriot Act because we're going to protect you. It's essentially, it's a scare tactic, you know, but the motive behind it is not what's being sold.
Yeah. All right, so back to the book. So, you know, we're going 40 years into the future, into 1946. The Mafia is now basically a national crime syndicate. There's one in every city, and they've expanded out of the Italian neighborhoods. And in 1946, they had made lots of money in Prohibition. All these gangsters had got rich selling illegal alcohol. And not only that, but like the gangsters who kind of took over were also massive heroin smugglers. Lucky Luciano and Santo Trafficante, Santo Trafficante Sr. specifically were basically the two largest heroin smugglers in America. And if you look at Prohibition, I mean, there were lots of Prohibition gangs, but the ones who really came into power afterwards were the ones who were also selling heroin. So it's 1946. The Mafia kind of helps with the war effort. In World War II, they help get rid of German spies in the Brooklyn docks. They also send word to kind of the La Cosa Nostra in Sicily to basically help with the U.S. invasion of Italy.
Which is crazy.
Well, the Mafia...
That makes sense.
The Mafia hated Benito Mussolini.
And they also...
Benito Mussolini came down very hard on the Mafia in Sicily, all these organized crime groups, but also just in general, everyone in Italy hated Benito Mussolini.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like it wasn't like Hitler in Germany. There wasn't the Mussolini youth program. People hated this guy. And the Italian people really were, specifically the organized crime element, were very against fascism and really were helping the Americans with the invasion of Sicily. So because of that, the national boss of the American Mafia, Charlie Lucky Luciano, he was in prison, but instead he gets deported to Italy. Yes. And basically for a little bit, he's running the American mob from Italy. So the Mafia kind of has this idea of, we're going to get all of our money together, and we're basically going to buy a city. A city where you can gamble and you could do whatever you want, and it'll basically be a city that we can run. And first, they try to do it with Las Vegas. They send their guy out, Bugsy Siegel. He's a Jewish gangster. He's very close to Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano, out to Las Vegas. But Las Vegas really, at that time, doesn't have like a whole infrastructure. They kind of have to wait for people to come from Los Angeles or California out there. And because of it, their casinos are kind of bleeding money. They also start to think that Bugsy Siegel was stealing money from them, that he was skimming money off the top and not telling the bosses or giving the bosses a cut, which he probably was. And they basically see Las Vegas as a failure. We now know that into the 70s, they actually did make a lot of money off Las Vegas. But at the time, gangsters aren't the most, patient people.
Long-term thinking.
Yeah, and they wanted something back immediately. So they're looking for a new city. Meyer Lansky and Santo Trafficante, they have relationships with the Cuban government, specifically Felencio Batista, dating back to Prohibition, because Meyer and Santo it's now Santo Trafficante Jr., but Santo Trafficante Sr., his father, had this relationship with Cuba where he was smuggling alcohol from the country into Florida. And Meyer Lansky was doing the same with New York. So they have this idea of basically, our idea for Las Vegas, we're going to do it in Havana. And they do what's called the Havana Conference. They invite all the gangsters from around the world, and then from all around America, and then they also have Lucky Luciano come from Italy to Havana. And one of the first things that's kind of discussed is they're going to kill Bugsy Siegel, because they're done with this guy, they're done with Vegas. And the murder of Bugsy Siegel...
Do we know who's at this meeting? Boss-wise?
There's a list of them in the back. Hold up. I can tell you exactly right now.
It's the heads of the 5 families, obviously.
Not all of them, because I don't believe Vincent Mangano was there. Vincent Mangano was head of what was now the Gambino crime family. But, no, Magliadano.
Bonanno was there.
Bonanno was there. Anastasia was there. Albert Anastasia.
A lot of them.
Albert Anastasia was basically the underboss of what's now the Gambino crime family. Vincent Mangano was the boss, but he was basically the boss in name only. Albert Anastasia ran everything. Right. But they all come to Havana, and they decide how they're going to carve up the city and carve up Cuba, who's going to own what casinos. And it's kind of decided that Lucky Luciano is going to come down, live in Havana pretty much permanently, and he's going to basically be the boss of all bosses for the American mob with like this throne in Havana. And it's a foreign...
The Americans wouldn't have got him in Cuba?
Well...
Because he wasn't allowed in America.
He wasn't allowed in America, but if he's in Cuba, and if he's in Havana, which is a foreign country,
so what?
And Havana doesn't want to prosecute him...
So what, though? America.
You'll see. They also like they weren't planning on advertising that he was there, but it's basically like it's going to be easier for him to run it from Havana than run it from. It's going to be easier for him to run this thing from Havana than run it from Italy.
Yeah. I'm when you said he's running the mob from Italy before, I'm like, in the 40s, how the fuck would that even be possible?
Like
you're sending telegrams?
He's basically like running it is a loose term, but people are still giving Luciano a cut of everything. He's still getting a cut from everything. Frank Costello, who's kind of the boss of that family, people see him as the boss in name only. They're still giving their cut to Luciano. They're still going to Luciano for advice. A lot of these guys were born in Italy, so they would kind of say like, "Oh no," they would say to the government that they're visiting their family or visiting the Vatican when really they'd be like discussing things with Luciano. Right. And basically, it was like it would be easier if he was here in Havana.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens is Vito Genovese kind of comes to Luciano before the Havana conference and tries to get Luciano to retire. Luciano...
Retire these nuts.
Vito Genovese and Frank Costello hate each other. Vito Genovese thought he should have been put as boss of the family. He thought he was looked over because Frank Costello was Sicilian and Vito Genovese was from Naples. And he comes to Luciano.
You're from that piece of dirt. I'm from this piece of dirt. That's the problem.
Well, the truth is, that's why Vito Genovese thought he was looked over. The truth is, Vito Genovese was like a douchebag and no one trusted him. Vito Genovese is like the only mob boss who supported Mussolini. He was a staunch supporter of Mussolini because he was a racist and he was an anti-Semite. And he hated Meyer Lansky because he was Jewish.
The steal. He wanted to stop the steal.
Yeah, no, he was like, this is a flawed. There were ballots found in rivers.
People are seeing amazing things.
So this riff kind of starts where people don't like Vito Genovese, and Vito Genovese kind of gets a that's where his hatred of Frank Costello and kind of Meyer Lansky, who he hated anyway because Meyer Lansky was Jewish. So they decide they're going to carve up Havana. They're going to take control of the casinos, and it's working well. But Lucky Luciano gets deported because they get Frank Sinatra to come to Havana during the Havana conference to basically perform a live concert for them. So Frank Sinatra...
He was the Mafia's bitch, dude.
He was. He was. And then he was flying to Las Vegas to do shows for them.
Yeah.
They really did. He flew wherever they told him. But the American media followed Frank Sinatra to Havana. Now they're like, oh, there's all these gangsters here, and also Lucky Luciano is here, and he's supposed to be in Italy. And there's one thing of basically Lucky Luciano and Frank Sinatra were hosting orgies in the penthouse of one of these hotels, and they basically were like, there's Frank Sinatra, there's Lucky Luciano, and there's all these hookers. And originally in the 30s,
it's kind of lit.
That's what Lucky Luciano originally went to jail for running hookers.
Well, that's what they could get him.
That's what they could get him on.
Right.
But it was basically like a big FU to the government, and the U.S. government came to
Kennedy. No.
I'm
thinking when I think of Cuba, I still think of Kennedy.
Yeah. In the 40s, it wasn't Eisenhower yet. It was still Truman. This was only 1946. This was 1 year after World War II. And they came to Batista and they're like, look, we're going to cut off aid to Cuba. We're going to cut off business relations to Cuba unless you tell Luciano to go back to Italy. And everybody's hands were tied.
Why would they make a scene like that? It's so stupid.
Because gangsters are dumb.
They really are.
Because gangsters are dumb.
I know. Because they just can't control
Because Luciano,
that ego.
Lucky Luciano was like, "Oh, I'm in Cuba and I don't want the Americans know. Let me host an orgy with the famous singer in the world."
Yeah. Stupid fucking idiot. Just like the Appalachian meeting. Like, oh, let's have 75,000.
That also comes up later. That comes up later on. But basically,
and then up to Gotti. I mean, it's the same shit.
Well, Gotti fucking loved the media attention.
No, I know. And nowadays, like, Gene Borello just went back to prison, like, for running his mouth on social media. So it's like they just never fucking learn. But the type of person, again, who would become in this lifestyle is not a long-term thinking person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why they couldn't wait for Las Vegas to be a success.
Unless the current boss, who's been boss of the Genovese family since like 96, Laborio Bellarmi or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
He's a fucking literal ghost. Like
he's a guy, there's like barely any pictures of him, right?
You can't even find a picture of him. There's like 2 pictures of him, period.
Yeah, and it's like from both are mugshots, right? Like there's like 2 mugshots of him from like the 90s, and that's it.
And then there's like 1 picture of him like walking with another dude, but
that's
from
insane.
Like 25 years ago. But he's like, he's a ghost, and the Genovese family is currently the most powerful family.
Yeah, well, that's
making the most money.
That's what they were back then because. The Havana Conference.
Cali was kind of like that.
The Havana Conference. It pisses a few people off. It makes a few people very happy. Meyer Lansky got a great deal out of it. It was Meyer Lansky and Santo.
There?
Lansky was there. Yeah, Lansky was like basically they decided he was the main guy in Cuba. He was going to be the main guy in Cuba.
Aside from Lucky.
But aside from Lucky. Well, once Lucky's deported.
Oh, after he's deported. Yeah.
Meyer's the main guy. Santo is probably like second. And then all the other mob bosses. And the 2 people who got really mad about it is one, Vito Genovese, because he thought he should be the boss over everything. And Albert Anastasia, because Albert Anastasia was kind of a boss he wasn't technically the boss of his family.
He was recognized as...
So he got the smallest cut out of everybody.
Right. Even though he really
there were some captains like Joe Adonis, who was a captain in the Genovese family, who got a better cut than Albert Anastasia. And Vincent Mangano.
What was his official title? Underboss?
Underboss, yeah.
That's higher than captain.
Right, but a captain in the Genovese family at that time would be higher than the underboss. At that time, like, the Mangano family wasn't that powerful. They became powerful over the next, 10 years because Albert Anastasia was grabbing everything. Mm-hmm. He was kind of, scorned by Cuba.
Right.
So anyway... They decide they're going to leave Las Vegas. They murder Bugsy Siegel, who's their guy. And the murder of Bugsy Siegel is really seen as the transfer of power in Las Vegas from New York to Chicago, because a lot of the New York mobsters took their investments out of Las Vegas and into Havana.
Right.
And Chicago and kind of the Midwest gangsters, like Chicago, the Milwaukee mob, the Detroit mob, the Kansas City mob, they put a lot of their money into Las Vegas, which turned out to be, in the long run, the much better option. Because through the 70s and 80s, they were making so much money off Las Vegas casinos. All right, so let's get into Fidel Castro a bit. So, after this, I was saying that Fulgencio Batista, he takes over in 1933. It's a military coup. At first, he's liked for a very long time. He's not really technically the president, but he's kind of running everything with puppet presidents. And Fidel Castro, he's the son of a rich landowner. First, he's in school to become a priest. He's kind of in this Jesuit school. He's going to become a priest. He leaves and decides to become a lawyer instead. And he becomes very political in college and very outspoken against the government because basically it was taken in a military coup. People didn't see this as a legitimate government. And while at first people liked Batista a lot, he was doing a lot of reforms and like giving people more rights, he started then slowly taking rights away.
And was he first elected and then did that power grab thing?
All right.
Because he was the leader of Cuba twice. He did the power grab in 1933, the coup d'etat. Then in 1940, he's actually elected. Right. 1940 to 1945, 1944 is the only time he's actually officially the president. He's kind of running things. But was there actually an election?
Yes, there was, and he did and it was legitimate, and he did actually win. During that time, during the early 40s, people liked him. But
I know. Yeah.
Then he's slowly taking rights away from people. Fidel Castro and a lot of the other students at the University of Havana, very outspoken against him. It's debated whether Fidel Castro is a communist at this point. I said in my breakdown that Fidel Castro doesn't become a communist because until he meets Che Guevara in 1955.
Well, there's theories that he was, but he just wasn't promoting it because he didn't.
Yeah,
he wanted.
There's theories that I went with that because that's what TJ English says.
Yeah.
There's theories that he was a communist all along. There's theories that when he meets Che Guevara, he's turned into a communist. There's theories that he becomes a communist once he takes over Cuba's government. And there's theories that he never truly believed in communism, but he saw the Soviet Union as being a more likely ally than America and basically went along with communism to appease them. So there's a lot of different theories about what Fidel Castro believed or not.
Right.
But Fidel Castro and kind of this group that follows him, they go to Haiti, who's having a kind of revolution of their own, and they get kind of military training over in Haiti from these Haitian rebels, and they come back to Cuba and they decide that they're going to try to overthrow the Cuban government. And there's only a handful of them. This is in 1953. So what I said was there's kind of two coup d'etats with Batista in 1930.
You said there's one.
No, there's one. There's a legitimate election, and then there's another coup d'etat.
Got it.
So there's a coup d'etat in 1933. In the early 40s, he's legitimately elected. He leaves for a while, and then his party that he kind of ran behind the scenes, it comes out that they're probably going to lose the next election. So he comes in with his army and he does another coup, and he is basically like, I'm 100% your guy now. We're not having any more elections. I run everything, and that Constitution that I gave you and that Bill of Rights and all that freedom of speech stuff is going away. It was
sounds like he needed a dose of America, bitch. That's some anti-American shit.
He was always full of shit because basically he gave everybody these rights, and it was
that got me fired up. I'm ready to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
It was basically like, you have these rights as long as you behave, as long as you keep voting for us. You know, the second we think that you're going to vote against our party, we're taking everything away.
Yeah.
This got
fuck everybody who feels like that.
This got Fidel Castro really mad. He was turned up.
We're gonna send Sleepy Joe over there and slap him around.
That sounds like some Alex Jones stuff of just like, Joe Biden was actually with Fidel Castro.
I mean, he's old enough. Jesus Christ.
So Fidel, he has his first revolution that fails in 1953.
How did he not get killed?
All right, because
that guy was on a suicide
because there's what they give doesn't make a lot of sense. Of us like Batista spared his life because.
What do you mean, in the book or the documentary we watched?
Yeah, in the documentary of the Cuba Libre story, which by the way,
that was the accompanying
piece on Netflix.
Not like we didn't do like a full-on accompany piece.
No, because that documentary, the Cuba Libre story, kind of just does the entire history.
Well,
of
I'm
Cuba.
just saying sometimes with an episode we'll have a legit this was the or like a an analysis of two at the same time. That's not what this was. But there is a documentary on Netflix.
Yes, the Cuba Libre story
that deals with
the gangsters in Havana, Castro's rise to power, and then
Batista
the Batista regime, and kind of what happened with Castro and Soviets' relationship afterwards.
Right.
But basically, what they say in the documentary is this: Fidel Castro was married to the daughter of Batista's right-hand man. Fidel Castro's father was also high up in the Batista's government. Fidel Castro was a rich kid.
Awkward around the holidays.
Everybody thinks of these revolutionaries from this time like they were peasants leading a revolution.
Yeah.
Fidel Castro was born into a rich family, and Che Guevara was also born into a rich family. You have to
be in a position of somewhat privilege to even have the fucking audacity to think you could do something like that. But also what's interesting is okay, this is going to sound like a really weird... I swear it's connected.
All right.
So I watched an interview with the manager of Nirvana, and he talks about how Kurt Cobain hid behind a slacker image.
Yes.
The actual person of Kurt Cobain was extremely meticulous in his vision and driven, extremely competitive, would call him up and complain that MTV didn't play their video an X number of times that day, would call him up with the sales of the Smashing Pumpkins and shit, and would be like, how come we aren't doing this? He was just but he used that image of a slacker.
Yeah.
Because I talk about this all the time with music stuff. It's very cool not to care.
Yeah.
It's not cool to care. So the point is, a lot of times the perception is not the reality. So with Fidel Castro, look at how he used the media. Yeah. Look at how he used this is a revolution. He would inflate the size of his own army. So that's the oldest trick in the book. Oh yeah, we're doing X, Y, and Z. Oh, okay, I guess they're legit.
Yeah.
He was doing all that shit. So it's just interesting. I know it's a weird example. But
No. And same with Che Guevara. Of just Che Guevara came from a rich family. He was a doctor first. He was pretty wealthy, but he would when he was kind of going around stirring up these revolutions, he would ride around on a motorcycle. He had the leather jacket. He tried to make it seem like he was some rugged guy from the streets, not some rich kid from a prominent Argentinian family.
Right.
Yeah.
That does not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
The older I get, that does not surprise me at all.
But so Fidel Castro is put into prison after his failed revolution in 1953. They're told to Fidel's father and Fidel's father-in-law that they're not going to kill him. But then in 1955, they let him out of prison and they put him into exile. I have some theories on why they did this. I think that the reason Batista did this is because if someone's sitting in a prison cell, then it's easier to form a revolution around them. It's easier to see someone as a martyr if they're sitting in a prison cell and they're a political prisoner than if you just sent them off somewhere else.
You're saying the reason that who didn't put Batista in jail?
No, the reason why Batista didn't put Fidel Castro in jail. Why Batista let Fidel out of jail. Because
you don't think it was because of the family connections?
I think that's why they didn't. I think that's why he didn't kill him.
Right.
But I think
that is a good point. That is a good
between those 2 years, they're seeing Fidel Castro as a martyr. And he thinks, if he sits as a political prisoner...
Batista didn't want this smoke. Let's be clear. He had fucking 20,000... I mean, dude, he could have killed fucking Castro.
He could have.
He didn't want the fucking trouble. He really didn't want the battle. There was no reason for Castro. When we're watching this thing, I'm going, what the fuck is wrong with Batista, dude?
He didn't want to turn him into a martyr. He didn't want him sitting in a... Why didn't he just
fucking kill him? I don't understand that concept.
I think if you kill someone and turn them into a martyr...
you're saying the people...
Okay. The people will see him as a martyr and rally around
revolution.
Have their own revolution. So, if he's sitting in a prison cell,
he had no game plan though. I don't understand.
But also, look at 30 years later with Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela is a political prisoner of South Africa, and a revolution forms around him of trying to free him. He becomes more powerful in prison than he was on the streets.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. Right?
And I think that he didn't
I don't know that much about that situation, but he's now he's like a fucking saint.
Nelson Mandela, of course.
Yeah.
But I don't think he wanted that to. I mean, Nelson Mandela was years later, but it's the same concept,
right?
And also, I think it's kind of like if he thought he sent Fidel Castro to Mexico. I don't think he really had any faith that Fidel Castro was actually going to lead an army of exiles to him.
What do you mean with Mexico?
Because that's where Fidel Castro was sent. Fidel Castro is exiled from Cuba. He goes to Mexico City, and that's where he meets Che Guevara.
Before they come back in the woods and shit.
Yeah. Che Guevara was Argentinian. He tried to start he was friends with basically the president of Bolivia. Che Guevara who was a communist and was ousted in a coup by the CIA. And Che Guevara thinks that he's going to get killed by the CIA, so he flees to Mexico City. And Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, they team together. This is where TJ English says that Fidel is turned to communism by Che Guevara. And Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, and 83 Cuban exiles, they sneak back into the country in 1955, and this is where the guerrilla war starts.
Right.
They're in the jungles of Cuba, and they're fighting an insanely small army fighting against the Batista regime. And slowly more and more people start to come to Fidel's side. They start seeing him as the man of the people. There's a certain mystique around him because he's this guy living in the jungle. He makes people believe that his army is way bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, I can't believe they had a fucking radio show.
They had a radio show, exactly.
Where were they broadcasting from? The woods?
Yeah, they were broadcasting from the middle of the jungle.
How?
And they...
technology-wise, I don't understand.
I think you can with a radio. You can broadcast from the middle of nowhere. Okay. Radios are pretty versatile.
Okay.
But they send they're making things up. They're saying they're winning battles that didn't actually happen.
I know.
They're saying the Batista regime is retreating from us.
It's the same shit.
And people around Cuba start to really support Fidel because people hated Batista in Cuba. One, he took away their constitution. He took away their Bill of Rights. He let the mafia do whatever they want in Cuba, and people were ready to get rid of this guy.
Batista let the mafia do whatever they want. Yeah. Did Batista financially benefit directly from...
Yeah. He was getting a cut from everything.
All right. Well,
him and Meyer Lansky were like this. We're tight. He was getting a cut of everything.
So why didn't the mafia prevent Castro?
I don't know how much they could do about it.
Sure. I mean, they're fucking running the city.
I mean...
Can't they run in the country? Can't they
All right, so here's the thing. Back to the mafia.
Why didn't they put a hit team together? I know later they did. They tried.
By 57, 58, since Fidel... I think a lot of it is they couldn't get to Fidel. I mean, everyone was trying to kill him. I'm sure that there was an attempt, at least early on.
Until Obama finally got him.
But Basically, the mob.
That's not what happened.
A lot of gangsters kind of start playing both sides in the revolution.
Because they're just trying to.
They're close to Batista. They're still giving him money. A lot of them start smuggling guns to Fidel Castro and his men. Because they have the idea of like, the people are turning against Batista. They really like this Fidel guy. Let's help him overthrow the government. And when he's in charge, he'll let us keep our casinos. That's what the thinking was. So in part, like,
why do that? But why do that instead of back the guy who's already doing that?
Because they thought that Batista was going to be gone. They smell. It's not that this was all done in secret. They were still very supportive of Batista. Batista thought the mafia was still on their side. They were making backup plans. They were saying, if Fidel gets through with this, let's give him guns. Let's run him guns and money so that if he's actually able to do this, we'll be like, hey, we helped you out. So let us keep our casinos.
So like, it'd be one thing, like the mafia just it's not a surprise that they're really not around anymore, because they just don't have any sort of backbone.
No.
You know, they're just this slippery nothingness.
Look, if you're the type of person to join the mafia, then you're the type of person to betray the mafia.
Facts. It's so true.
And then at the same time in Havana, things are kind of boiling up with Meyer Lansky. Albert Anastasia. In 1951, Albert Anastasia says he has enough of Vincent Mangano, of this guy who's like the pretender boss. He has Vincent Mangano and his brother murdered. And now, in 1951, Albert Anastasia is the official boss. And
already killing a boss, which back then...
Though, this is how he justified it. He said, well, Vincent Mangano was going to have me killed.
He sexually assaulted me.
He pulled a Cuomo.
He Me Too'd Mangano.
This was the justification. Albert Anastasia.
By the way, Cuomo. Not only is Cuomo not going to leave, he's going to win re-election.
Yo,
you know that's probably going to happen.
I don't know.
He's taking the Trump route. He's just plowing through.
He said it was cancel culture.
I know. Fuck. It's cancel culture that 93 women said that.
Was it 93?
No, it's like 8. But the point is, but yeah, I mean,
this is how Albert Anastasia justified it. Right. He was like, well, the rules are you're not allowed to kill a boss to become the boss. I didn't kill him to become the boss. I killed him because he had a hit out on me and I had to get him first. That was his justification.
Is that true?
It's fucking semantics.
It's yeah, exactly. That's what Gotti said about Costello.
They gave him a pass because Anastasia was. They gave him a pass because Albert Anastasia was making them more money than Vincent Mangano was,
which is really all that matters.
But now that Anastasia is the boss, he wants a bigger piece of Cuba. He starts causing trouble. In the book, T.J. English calls him Hurricane Albert. And he's already kind of this disliked guy. You know, he's got like a killing spree. He's doing murders himself, which like Luciano and the other bosses kind of come to him and is like, you cannot do murders yourself. You're a boss. You have people under you to do these. If you're killing a guy and someone spots you, you're the boss. Everything goes down. He doesn't listen because he likes killing people. Right. He likes doing it with his own hands.
It's that difference that we always make a distinction on, where it's like some people are, at least in theory, they're doing the crime for, to better their family or better their situation. And then you have other people that are just out and out like
that was Anastasia. He loved killing people.
I mean, what does that even mean?
They are kind of appeasing him with Cuba because he's getting more and more. They're like, all right, well, you are officially a boss now, so we're going to get a bit more. And in 1957, they say enough is enough, and they kill Albert Anastasia. There's a picture in his book. Look, it's Fidel and his army in one of the one of the mob-owned casinos, because once Fidel goes into Havana, they like wreck all the casinos.
And Anastasia was killed in the barbershop, right?
Albert Anastasia was killed in the barbershop.
What are the events surrounding his wow, how did they get all these photos?
I don't know. Carmine Persico and Joe Gallo go into the barbershop and they shoot him.
Persico, man.
Yeah, Carmine the Snake Persico. And that's the event that got him his button. He became a made man because he whacked out a boss.
My friend Joey Produce.
Joey Produce.
From Ozone Park.
Joey Produce from Ozone Park. He'll give you the freshest tomatoes.
He will. That's literally what he does. He does produce. I used to work with him. I worked with him, like, I saw him every day for like 2 years. But he grew up with like the Persicos and the Gottis.
Oh, damn.
He was like, he wasn't Carmine's age, but he was like up there. Like,
yeah.
He was like, Carmine had a brother who was also called Teddy Persico.
Right. Okay.
And like when you think of Teddy Persico, you think of Carmine's son, who's also doing life in jail. But there was another one. I might be getting the name wrong, but anyway, he would like talk about the Persicos. Yeah,
I mean, Cuba wasn't the only reason why they killed Albert Anastasia. Albert Anastasia was doing a lot of things wrong.
You can't be out here just like
famously. So there was I forget the two names, but there was a bank robber in New York City. He was not connected to the mafia at all. One day he's spotted by the street by some like just good Samaritan guy. And it's all over the newspapers, like this good Samaritan caught this, was able to spot this bank robber on the street. Albert Anastasia sees that and has the good Samaritan guy murdered. It had nothing to do with the mafia, but he hated rats so much.
I kind of respect that.
They shot his penis off.
You lost me on that.
They shot him twice in the head, through both eyes, and then they shot his penis off. The two eyes is like a rat things of like you shouldn't have saw anything. They shoot him. Through the eyes.
So these guys.
Yeah. So they were like,
when you're shooting dicks off in broad daylight, like rethink your life.
They're like, Albert Anastasia is gone. But then he had a lot of pieces in Havana. He had a lot of control of the casinos, and Meyer Lansky kind of takes over a lot.
I don't respect killing people. Just want to make that clear if it isn't already.
The day that Albert Anastasia was murdered, he was supposed to meet with Santo Trafficante because they were planning on making a move in Havana against Meyer Lansky that same day. And it just so happened that the New York bosses decide to murder him that morning.
Well, he would have had to get that okayed because Meyer Lansky didn't work for a particular family.
No, I don't think they were going to murder him. They were going to basically set up their own casinos outside of the like mob system, so that Lansky wouldn't be getting a piece of it. Because already a lot of the Italian gangsters were I feel like we could go long on this one. It's fine.
No, I was just checking.
A lot of the New York gangsters were anti-Semitic. They didn't like Meyer Lansky because he was Jewish, right. But also they felt like they gave this outsider, because he wasn't a made man of the mafia, too much power. Of basically like a guy who's not one of us is controlling our city. And the heat gets turned up even more because Meyer Lansky's main ally in New York, Frank Costello, there's an assassination attempt against him.
Well, they did kill him, no?
No. Frank Costello lives. Who's the boss? That's the Oddfather, who he walked around with a bathrobe.
The Chin
Gigante. Vincent the Chin Gigante. He's a young, strapping young man. He goes up to Frank Costello in the hallway of a hotel and shoots him in the head. But it kind of just grazes Frank Costello's head, and he survives.
That was they were calling Cuomo the Chin because he was walking around in his like bathrobe outside of the governor's mansion.
That's awesome.
He had like that.
That's not awesome
room.
because fuck Andrew Cuomo. But yeah, he doesn't deserve that title.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I probably talked about this, but my friend who he works at a heliport where helicopters come in and out of. So he's seen Cuomo like a million times while he's been governor, and he would always tell me that like he's a prick. He doesn't tip.
Yeah.
He's not a nice guy. And I always kind of was like, really? Like, not that I can't believe that, but like, you know,
Right.
because everyone was so, especially with coronavirus, like so, you know.
there was a joke on The Daily Show. Trevor Noah was saying.
Homosexuals or.
Trevor Noah was saying Andrew Cuomo, the only guy in America who wishes it was still 2020.
Yeah. He was like a celebrity this time last year.
Yeah, it was weird. It was the fall from grace for Andrew Cuomo is weird. First of all, I always hated Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
I did think in the beginning, I thought he was doing a good job with coronavirus, which look, with getting case numbers down, he was doing a good job.
Not really.
He
Dude,
wasn't
New
doing
York
a
is
good.
bad right
he wasn't
now.
doing a good job with helping small businesses.
Well, certainly.
100%.
Well-
100%. And he's a dirtbag for that, and he's dirtbag for the nursing home things. A lot of the like lockdowns that he went in, if you're helping these businesses that you're going to be shutting down, then okay, you got to do what you got to do. But he wasn't doing that. He wasn't helping any of the businesses.
Of course, but it goes back to messaging. Like, whether it's, you know, to use the examples in this episode, whether it's Kurt Cobain pretending to be a slacker when he's really like a fucking Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
When it's, you know, if it's Fidel with his radio show saying that they're fucking, you know, their army is bigger than it is and they just won this battle. Or if it's Cuomo going on primetime television and being fucking Grandpa Cuomo.
Yeah.
You know, it's messaging. It's how you're delivering your visual, your message, you're hammering home your points. Like, that's what people fucking eat up.
Right.
So that's why he got so popular. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, he's running like a fucking, you know, real, from what the accounts are, a pretty bad situation. So,
Yeah.
Plus, he was just an asshole. But that's why it doesn't pay to be an asshole.
No.
Like, it doesn't pay to kick people on your way up or badmouth people or be a dirtbag, or, you know, because when it comes for you,
we'll get to
no one will be there for you.
We'll get to Vito Genovese because that was him.
Exactly.
Vito Genovese. So the hit of the assassination attempt of Frank Costello was by Genovese. Genovese thought that he was looked over, that he should be the boss, that he should be running things. He didn't just want Frank Costello's spot. He wanted Lucky Luciano's spot. He thought he should run the national crime organization. He sends young the Chin Gigante to kill Frank Costello. It's botched. Frank Costello lives. But the thing about Frank Costello is Frank Costello never wanted to be a gangster to begin with. He was a street kid. He was forced into it. He never really wanted to be the boss. He did it because Charlie Luciano asked him to do it. He wanted to leave the gangster life altogether, and he thought, okay, this is my chance. So he says, I'm retiring, and Vito Genovese, you can be the boss. And Frank Costello retires, and it's not till 20 years later that Frank Costello dies of natural causes. But the assassination attempt against Frank Costello, it leads to the Appalachian meeting. The Appalachian meeting is basically Vito Genovese calls together all the Mafia families to basically, one, they're going to talk about who's going to be running New York now, because since Frank Costello retired.
Which our grandmother's uncle was at this meeting.
Yes. Who's going to run the Albert Anastasia family, and how we're going to kick Meyer Lansky out of Cuba.
Wow.
Vito Genovese was a racist, and he was an anti-Semite, and he did not like Meyer Lansky. And Meyer Lansky was kind of, with Frank Costello leaving, was out of friends in New York, because all kind of the old school gangsters who were fine with working with Irish or black or Jewish gangsters because there was kind of this immigrant oppressed people mentality of we're all into this together. That was gone, and now it was replaced by people who wanted to keep the mob strictly Italian.
Right.
Meyer Lansky, it's rumored that he's the one that called the police on them at the Appalachian meeting.
Really?
That's at least what they said.
How did he
that's
even
the
know
theory.
about it, though?
He figured out through his channels that they were having this meeting and that he tipped the cops off. But the cops come in, they round everybody up, give them warrants or whatever, and everyone turns on Vito Genovese because Vito Genovese was in charge of this meeting.
And so he takes the blame for it.
He takes the blame for it, and now they're like, well, maybe Meyer isn't that bad. Yeah, Meyer is Jewish, and he's not technically in the mafia, but like Vito just got everybody arrested.
Yeah.
Vito's set up on a drug charge, and he spends the rest of his life in prison. That's a few years later, but it's because of the Appalachian meeting.
They gave him the Fitch Lamana.
They gave him the Fitch Lamana. I heard different stories.
Not drugs, but that was
hear different stories. One was like it was Lucky Luciano who like came up with the plan. Another one that was not Joe Colombo. Carlo Gambino who came up with it. But basically they came together and they're like, we're sending this guy away because like this guy's an asshole, you know? But none of that matters. Even if they were going to kick Meyer Lansky out of Cuba in 1958, it does not matter because Fidel Castro is coming in.
Yeah.
And Fidel Castro, his army is small. It's less than 1,000, but people think it's huge.
Yes.
And
because of the messaging.
Because of the messaging, and the Cuban people embrace Fidel Castro. They want Batista gone. They want these corrupt politicians gone. They want the mafia gone.
Yep.
New Year's Eve, 1958. Fulgencio Batista and his cronies, they see their time is up, and they dip out. And while everybody's out celebrating New Year's Eve, they loan a plane with $30 million, and they dip. I believe he goes to Florida. 6 days later,
if that plane crashed, would you be more upset about dying or losing the money?
Who am I? I'm on the plane. If I'm a family
you
member,
are the plane.
I am the plane. We have the documents.
Mr. President, you are the plane.
6 days later, Fidel takes...
Shout out to planes that don't crash. Appreciate you. I'm afraid of planes. I got to get over that.
And then later, one of like Fidel's main dudes he assassinates by having his plane crash. Maybe that's how he got the idea.
I gave it to him. All right, let's wrap this thing
up. All right. So January 6th, Fidel takes over Havana. All the mob bosses, it's very clear he doesn't want the mob there. They go into every casino. They trash them. There's the famous photo of Fidel and all of his men hanging out in the casino lobby. They're knocking things over. They hold some of the hotel guests hostage for a couple of days.
It's always fun.
The mobsters get out besides Santo Trafficante, who is imprisoned by Fidel. For a time, Fidel thinks of assassinating him. The rumor is that Santo Trafficante gave him a bribe of like a couple $1,000 and was like, let me just leave to America. And
a couple thousand? Got to come heavier than that.
I don't know. Maybe it was a few 100,000.
Yeah.
But the story is that Santo Trafficante Jr. Bribed his way out of Cuba and was able to get it back. And the rest, everybody knows the rest. Fidel Castro took power. He keeps promising that he's going to hold elections, but he doesn't. And he becomes the dictator that Batista was. This constitutional democracy that the people of Cuba thought that they were getting back the Bill of Rights that they thought they were getting back, it
With
never
Castro?
happens. With Castro,
Yeah.
it never happens. Fidel Castro just makes deals with the Soviet Union.
It's almost
They're
like
fully
power
communist.
corrupts you or something. I don't know. Just a thought.
And whatever people's revolution that they thought they were fighting for is gone. And then the mafia...
Should have been Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders wouldn't let that happen.
No.
And then the mafia teamed with the CIA and tried to murder Fidel Castro.
And did murder JFK.
And did murder JFK, possibly. I don't know. It depends on who you believe. And that's the story. And the mob never gets their money back. Meyer Lansky basically goes bankrupt after this. He tries to open up different casinos.
After the whole Cuba situation.
He's never able to get his money out. He had so much money invested in these casinos. He's never able to get out. For years, the mob is trying to get they're trying to get...
Why didn't they just take their shit and leave before Castro?
Because it wasn't liquid for the mafia. It's tied up in all these casinos.
Yeah.
And Fidel just ransacked all the places. You know? And to make matters worse, by that time, Las Vegas was doing pretty well.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
And it's if you just kept with Las Vegas, you would have been better.
And what does that teach you, ladies and gentlemen? The long term. The long game.
Exactly.
Johnny Long Game.
Exactly.
You got to play the long game always.
Yeah, Meyer Lansky tries setting up in the Bahamas and a few different places. But they never, he's never really successful as a gangster. Again, he kind of goes into semi-retirement obscurity until Meyer Lansky dies in 1980. And for years, you know, there's assassinations attempt again. There's like over 600 CIA assassination attempts against Fidel Castro. Some including the Mafia. Famously, the Bay of Pigs happens. Mm-hmm. Talk about like how much of a weird gangster Richard Nixon was. So Fidel Castro comes to America after he takes over. He, you know, at least there's like somewhat of an attempt to make peace. But the idea for the blueprints for the Bay of Pigs invasion have already been set up. Nixon and Eisenhower were already planning on killing this guy. And you see video of Nixon meeting with Fidel Castro, shaking his hand and basically being like, oh, you know, maybe we could, you know, our two countries can find peace. The entire time, Nixon knows he's going to try to murder this guy.
Yeah.
But then JFK gets elected, and you know the Bay of Pigs kind of gets botched, and it's a huge thing because JFK, through his campaign, his idea was just like, if the United States and the Soviet Union can have a mutual ally in Cuba, then we can have peace between our two superpowers. Then he's elected. He learns that, well, this invasion is already in progress and there's no stopping it.
Havana Nocturne,
TJ English. Look, I find history fascinating, especially like the underground history, gangsters and revolutionaries of like the stuff the stuff that's under the surface that's going on. All the nits and gritty of what's going on in Havana, of like why the people were okay with a communist, were fine with this communist revolutionary, because look at how corrupt their government was. You know, this is the more different of TJ English's books. I believe this is his bestseller.
He's a legit dude, man.
Yeah,
he does his shit.
The Savage City is the only one of his books that I have not read yet. Which I believe is about like New York in the 70s and just kind of in general.
That sounds sick.
Yeah, I don't know if it's about like a particular crime group or just kind of a general outlook. on kind of crime in the 70s. But you know, it makes me want to have a rum and coke, honestly. This book, a lot of this book is about like kind of the crazy things that you could do in mob controlled, like Frank Sinatra is there, that you could kind of do in 1950s Havana. Of, you know, reading it.
Talk about Superman.
Superman is real weird. Superman was a live sex show that was basically, I'm sure the mob was getting a piece of it, but you know, there is an element of racism involved, clearly, with why? Superman.
He's like a Cuban.
Well, you know, he was an Afro-Cuban with a very well endowed, who they would have chained up almost like King Kong.
Oh, geez.
And they would.
I didn't look that deep into it.
And they would throw like a scrawny white girl in front of him, and people and a crowd of dudes would watch him banging this, you know, scrawny girl while they all cheered on.
It's fucking disgusting.
It is disgusting, and like, yeah, there's clearly a huge element of racism involved with this. Yeah. They had him. There's a scene in Godfather 2. I don't know if it's the actual guy Superman who's in there, but they're supposed to be at like one of Superman's shows, and they bring him out in chains like he's King Kong. They have the, you know, blonde white girl. She's like tied to two poles, like how the girl is in King Kong, and you know, the Superman rips her clothes off. It's
all right.
It's an insanely racist sex show. And that's the type of shit that happened in Havana. When I say I want to be in Havana
racism
in the 50s,
and rape.
Yeah.
That's
when I'm talking about want to hang out in Havana in the 50s, I'm talking about like hang out on the beach with a Cuba Libre. Yeah, I'm not.
Camila Coley. Who's the girl? Who's
Camila Cabello?
There you go.
Love her. Fifth Harmony needs to get back together. That's all the members
drunk like song.
All the members of Fifth Harmony are Cuban.
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying. We're talking about Cuba. They're all Cuban.
You said it like I was like.
Well, I'm saying it's not just Camila Cabello.
I didn't even know she was Cuban. I'm just saying she has a song
called Havana. Yeah.
Okay.
She's born in. Camila Cabello was born in Havana.
Oh, yeah. All right. Awesome. Good for her.
All right. Havana Nocturne.
I'll file that in my drawer of things I couldn't care less about.
Havana Nocturne. Check out TJ English. That's what I have to say. He's my favorite author. I'm gonna keep doing his books. Havana Nocturne, and then
if we do guests and interviews, we should hit him up.
I've met him once before when we were doing the John Gotti documentary. I met him.
Care to bring that up on the podcast? We're supposed to be entertaining people.
Here's the thing: we've done 2 of his books before, and I've definitely brought it up before that I've met him once.
All right, fine.
All right.
So you're saying I have a bad memory? So you're saying I'm a piece of shit?
These ones are long. It's fine.
No, I know. I don't know. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you have.
Maybe I haven't.
Is it when you were doing the thing with Larry Mazza?
It wasn't the same day, but yeah, it was that show. It was John Gotti
interview.
It was Gotti and Son.
TJ's in that.
Yes.
I remember that because I did rewatch that not that long ago.
That's also really good. Godfather and Son.
Great.
It's great. The Cuba Libre story is cool. Of like you know, if you're really into like history and just like, you know, it goes back to Cuba in history from like the 1800s, you know, all the way up to the 90s. And yeah, this has been Movies by McManus. So you could check out our YouTube channel where we kind of have 10-minute breakdowns that I do, and also the video format of these podcasts. We also have clips, individual clips. If you like this podcast,
that's the new playlist.
That's the new playlist. If you like this podcast, but you don't want to stick with us for a whole hour, you can stick with us for 10 minutes at a time. And
sometimes not even. Sometimes it's 5 minutes.
Sometimes it's 5. Sometimes it's 14. Sometimes it goes longer. And
we're also on all the podcast apps. If you are watching this on
we're
YouTube,
on Spotify. We're on.
Take us into the car on your trip to the fucking wherever the fuck you go.
And check us out on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
OnlyFans.
Movies by McManus. We are not on OnlyFans. We should.
Speak for yourself, kid.
What if we just did movie reviews on OnlyFans?
Well, because that's the thing. It's not specifically supposed to be for sex.
Right. That's how they get away.
Or for whatever you call it. Porn. Not porn. I'm old, man. I'm out of the game. I didn't do any of that shit. I missed that whole generation.
I'm so tired. We gotta do this.
I mean, I watch porn and stuff. We'll be in movies occasionally. I'm not even a big porn guy.
I know.
Unless they have like a Superman film. No, I'm not gonna watch that.
Don't bring up Superman.
I know. Fuck that. I hate that I know about that. You know, like there's certain things that you're like, I wish I could unknow that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of them.
It's disgusting. All right, this is
treat everybody with
McManus.
Respect.
Havana Nocturne, How the Mob Owned Cuba and Then Lost It in the Revolution by T.J. English.
See you next time.
See you next time. This movie is by McManus, and have a good night.